us. None of it mattered in the end. Everything she touched rippled into failure.
Zero Parades, the new game from Zaum, who created Disco Elysium, is a game all about failure and about guilt.
Brilliant. Relentless. Magnetic.
Hey everyone, I'm Lucy. I'm here at Gamescom 2025. I just sat in on a presentation from the developers at Zaum, where they showed us some gameplay clips from Zero Parades, which was formerly known as C4. And yes, that is their follow-up to Disco Elysium. It is not a sequel, completely separate story, universe, the whole shebang. In it, you play as Herschel. So in a complete contrast to Disco Elysium, where you play as, in case you haven't played it, I'm not going to name him, your main character, you're basically a drunken amnesiac, and you, as the player, are piecing together the story just as much as he is. But in Zero Parades, you play as Herschel, codenamed Cascade, and you have one hell of a backstory. Basically, you are a spy. And many years ago, you led a team, and you led them awry. You basically screwed over your team, and then people you were working for said, "Nuh-uh, you're on ice for 5 years." But now, unfortunately, you have to get back in the game, and that means you've got to find all your friends and talk to them and convince them to work with you once again. So very, very different setup to Disco Elysium. The one thing I will say is that looking at the gameplay footage, there is no doubt in my mind that this is a Zaum game. There are skill checks. There is what they were referring to as the thought cabinet plus, where instead it's called conditioning. So same kind of concept, but you take on a thought, you percolate on it, you decide to accept that thought, you get different stat changes based on how, or if you accept it or reject it, and then you can choose to confront it in ways as you play. So the example they were giving is, hey, you're told that smoking is bad, right? What if you internalize that thought, but then you're in the field and you realize that if you go smoking with some characters, you might get some more intel, but at the same time you have your kind of inner voice telling you that smoking is bad. So you're kind of being confronted with various different parts of your personality in that way. So yes, if you've played Disco Elysium, you'll kind of understand the concept from the thought cabinet. So Herschel is obviously carrying a lot of guilt, but that is not the only thing that you kind of need to be aware of as the game continues. So throughout the game, you have essentially pressures. So kind of external factors that impact you, things like delirium, fatigue, anxiety, and doing things like having consumables or going to sleep can definitely help you keep the negative side effects of those at bay. The music is not being done by C-Power. Instead, it is a mix of like jazz fusion, and the whole aesthetic, apart from being undeniably Zaum, it's very heavily rooted in the 90s. And even just watching like short snippets of gameplay, and I will say we didn't actually get to see that much of it, firmly rooted in the 90s, and kind of made me a little bit nostalgic for the technology and the fashions at the time. And speaking of fashion, of course, as a spy who needs to get a bunch of information, you do have to don the occasional disguise to get access to places and to talk to people and get various pieces of information. I kind of love that that's part of the spy fantasy. However, what is not part of the spy fantasy in Zero Parades is the fact that Herschel's kind of like the anti-James Bond. She is not smooth, she's not really calm, collected. There's also the pressure from the place that she's in. There are these three kind of factions sort of vying against each other. There's like a huge conglomerate bank. There are techno-fascists. There's kind of the town, the city itself, the place that you are in. All these different people think very different ways, vying for power. And so as Herschel, you are kind of stumbling your way through this as you try and reunite this group of people to get together. So my takeaways from Zero Parades, undeniably a Zaum game. Everything they were talking about, every cultural touch point they were referring to, I'm just very excited to see how this all comes together. Another takeaway, spy fantasy, but not necessarily in a way that we've seen it done before. Games like Hitman, it's all about power, it's all about being cool, in control, and of course, yeah, if things fumble, you can kind of pick it up. This is a game about fumbling, and I'm interested to see how they don't discourage the player against repeated failures. Very intrigued by that. Very interested to see how these characters come together, what their backstories are. I imagine they've got a lot of beef to have with Herschel, and I'm interested to see how me, as the player, can navigate that and hopefully bring them all together. Painterly art style, it looks beautiful. I'm excited to see more of it. It was very, I don't know, the place felt full of life already, and we only got to see a little bit of it. And finally, music, already very, very good from the snippet that we got to hear. Like I said, it's jazz fusion. So there isn't a release date on Zero Parades, aka C4, just yet. but obviously stay tuned to GameSpot. We'll keep you updated with everything as we find out. Just really goes to show that video games have come a long way since Pac-Man. Anyway, for more from Gamescom, stay tuned to GameSpot.